Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shai Avital. I'm the head of high-tech banking at UMTB USA, Mizrahi-Tefahot Bank. Mizrahi-Tefahot Bank is the fastest growing banking group in Israel. We've been supporting Israeli startups, founders, VCs since the year 2000. Our focus here in the US is basically to help Israeli founders to scale, to bridge the gap between Israel and the US. I'm proud to say that some of these companies that we've been supporting are also backed by our special guest today, Benhamou, and his fund, BGV, which makes today's conversation especially meaningful. It's my privilege to moderate this discussion with Eric, founder and global and general partner of Benhamou Ventures, and the former CEO and chairman of companies like 3Com and Palm. Eric has been instrumental in shaping both Silicon Valley and Israel innovation story, and continue to invest in pioneering companies across cybersecurity, AI, and such. So before we dive in, first of all, Eric, thank you for coming here today and being with us.
My pleasure.
And just another note that today also happens to be Eric's birthday, so.
I'm turning 24 in base 32.
So Eric, you had a remarkable path from building companies like 3Com and Palm to funding a global VC. Tell us a little bit about your story and what experiences have influenced how you approach investing today in general.
Sure. Well, there are two things that I think are relevant to the conversation today. One is that all of us, we have a mammalian brain, so we're not really designed to understand exponential waves. We're very good at extrapolating linearly, but not exponentially. So as a result, we tend to overestimate near-term changes and underestimate long-term changes. So I'll give you an example of this. You mentioned 3Com. So at 3Com, we had this tradition of having a time capsule every 10 years. So in the 1980s, this was, of course, before the internet, with very early days of local area networks and PCs. We had the incredible ambition to connect 1 million computers to networks. And we put this in time capsule in the early 80s. And in 1990, we opened the time capsule, and then we realized, oh, we only had a goal of 1 million. We've already connected 10 million. So we figured for the 1990s, we're going to have a very ambitious goal. We're going to try to do 100 million in the 1990s. And when you opened the time capsule in 2000, it was 400 million. And that's, it doesn't mean that we beat all of our plans quarter after quarter, year after year, but it meant that we completely underestimated the power of the wave. So today there is a very similar wave, and it's the AI wave. And so Gartner has a way to capture the phenomenon I'm talking about. They have the hype curve. So AI is now at the peak of inflated expectations, and we're headed towards a trough of disillusionment before we really finally getting right over time. So I always have to remind myself of these stories because we always make the same mistake, not just as operators, but as investors. And I would say the second lesson that was critical for me when I made the transition from being an operator to an investor is that as an operator, you're attracted to problems and you want to solve the problems. And as an investor, you're not really paid to solve problems for your founders. You're paid to help them, but it's very tempting to throw good money after bad and to put more capital and attention behind companies who are struggling and not enough money and attention behind companies who are winning and flying. And you have to self-correct this, otherwise you're going to end up being maybe a good coach, a good mentor, but not a good investor.
That's a great perspective and also a good setup for my next question. For Israeli founders looking to scale into the U.S., how should they think about entering and scaling into the U.S., but in today's climate?
Yeah, today's climate is a little bit special because of course, the conflicts in the region, coupled with a sweeping wave of anti-Semitism around most Western democracies. So clearly there are headwinds. So in 2022, when the war erupted between Russia and Ukraine, we had a significant investment in the company. Had about 1,000 engineers in Ukraine, 1,000 engineers in Russia. They really, really were hurt by this. I mean, they recovered, but they had to completely relocate their engineers. And outside of Russia, they had to close the Russia office, move everybody who was in Kiev to Lviv or Poland or something else. And eventually they recovered, but it took a long time to convince their customers that their engineers were outside of the conflict zone. So, so I think in the case of Israeli companies, it's clearly they will face this headwind. But the countervailing factor is that, on the other hand, if an Israeli founder focuses on the U.S. market, it continues to be the most attractive markets for most technologies, certainly AI. So there's a lot of AI talent around the world, not just in the U.S. But the markets, the scale markets with the biggest deployments earliest will be in the US. It won't be in Europe. It won't be in Latin America. It won't be in Africa. It might be in Asia, but the biggest market there in China is somewhat out of reach. So in the end, they really have to focus on the US market. And my encouragement to them is they have to look as a credible supplier to a U.S. market. In many cases, it means being a U.S. company, not an Israeli company. It's a topic that was brought up by panelists this morning, and I thought their views are very similar to mine.
And you mentioned your experience with Ukrainian companies. Now, after October 7 and everything, did it change your approach when evaluating Israeli companies, your discussions with fellow investors here in the US and Silicon Valley about the opportunities?
A little bit, and let me explain on this. So in the US, most people who are in investing age or in founding age have never met any kind of conflict. They were after the Vietnam era, so they've basically been blessed with peaceful times throughout their lives. So they don't have an appreciation for the resilience power that can exist in human beings, particularly in Israeli entrepreneurs. So they were surprised to see that despite bomb flyings and missiles and so on, that Israeli companies kept meeting the milestones, they kept delivering. I was not surprised. I fully expected that because in Israel, you're programmed to be this way. But I had to convince my fellow investors, who in many cases are not, they don't have this cultural background, that they should expect great things from Israeli entrepreneurs.
Yeah, we also heard this morning from the Israeli Central Bank owner about how the Israeli economy is resilient and bounce back. Let's just a little bit maybe zoom out from, discuss the technology itself. Recently, your founders introduced the Enterprise 5.0 vision, where AI augments human work instead of replacing. I think that also was discussed here in some panels today. Could you share an example from your portfolio that illustrates this transformation in action?
Sure. Enterprise 5.0 is how we describe these AI-first companies who are delivering transformative solutions. AI first as opposed to AI as a veneer over an old-style SaaS company. So the important thing is that AI is not just a technological phenomenon. It's a work transformation phenomenon. So you have to really understand how human beings are changing the way they go about their work, accomplishing their task using the tool. So for us, an Enterprise 5.0 company is one that understands not just the technology, but understands the workplace, the work environments, the industry, and how these workflows are being transformed. It's not just jobs, but it has a task level. A job is nothing more than a collection of tasks. So I'll give you one example that I think everybody can relate. We all go to the doctors, and the doctors spend a fair amount of time processing emails, and these emails, and there's about 30 to 40 a day in average, they come from labs. They order labs for the patients, and obviously they come back within a day or two with a document full of numbers, blood panels, lipid panel, and so on. And they have to go through this. They have to process 30, 40 emails a day, looking at all these numbers, figuring out what's in range, what's out of range. Should the patient stay on the same medication? Should the patient be called for a visit? Should something change? So it turns out that this is an excellent example of what AI is good for today, because these protocols are taught in medical schools to medical school students. If you can teach a medical school student what to do in reaction to a lab test report, you can teach an AI as well. So you can automate this entire process without necessarily taking the doctor out of the loop. You can do everything, all the grunt work of looking through every number and highlighting what should be done and composing the response to the patient, but then presenting it to the doctor to review and approve. So instead of spending an hour and a half doing this every day, maybe an hour is saved, an hour and a half is saved maybe, but certainly a significant amount that can be devoted to patients. So that's an example of a workflow that can be transformed and expanded.
And maybe one last question. You emphasize a lot trust and transparency. What does it mean in practice?
Yeah, this is a conversation which is inevitably linked to these AI transformations. So whenever you talk about an AI-based solution, you have to worry about where does the data come from? What's the source with the provenance? Is the data clean? Is the acquisition of the data in violation of any kind of regulation, say GDPR in Europe or the equivalent here in the US? And will the data be safe after training, after inference, or do you increase your attack surface area on the data by virtue of running a model against it? So all of these considerations are relatively new. We did not worry too much about this 5 years ago, but they're absolutely top of mind before you go to a scale deployment.
All right, Eric, thank you so much for your sharing your journey and interesting perspective and insights. I'm sure that everyone leaves here today with a clear sense of how to build and scale in this new era. I want to thank you and wish you a happy birthday and many more years of successful companies and joy. Yeah, please join us again next time.
Thanks very much for having me, Shai. Thanks.